Members, an AGM is a time to reflect on a year gone by, and I would like to do that and begin with some thank yous. Thank you to the Chairman and to the Vice Chairman and the Treasurer and to all the party officers and the party executive for all they have done for the party over the last year, but also for their wisdom, their support and their guidance to me. Thanks also to Hazel and to Colin and to all the party staff at headquarters and at Stormont for their tireless, and it is tireless, attention to our business. Like any MLA, I also want to thank my own staff at Stormont and at South Street in Newton Ards for keeping me on track. I also want to thank and pay tribute to the many component parts of this great Ulster Unionist Party, not least the young Unionists who are really starting to rock, folks. Just look at the number of young councillors who were returned last May in the local government elections. And of course, look at the total number of councillors elected last May in the local government elections. 88, folks. Nice job. Really, really nice job. And I do want to single out one particular component part of the party, and at the risk of being accused of being sexist, it is the Women's Council, because they are, quite simply, for a number of reasons, utterly brilliant. So thank you for your support. And congratulations again to Sonia Copeland. And of course, thanks to all of you in this room, because you are the people who made last May a success at local government level, not least because you have always bought into the notion that if you play as a team, you will get your reward come election time. So I thank you. As the leader said, as the chairman said, this marks the end of my third year as leader. I don't think anybody disagrees that we have made progress in terms of playing as a team. But people should know what my leadership is standing for today. And in one word, it is people. I believe in people. I trust in people, and I want people to succeed in life. So let's give them some more control over their lives. Can you imagine how transformational it will be if our people are wealthier, healthier, and happier? You know, the pursuit of happiness has a lot going for it. And I think what's wrong with the way we're doing business up at Stormont is that politics often gets in people's way rather than in helping them achieve. The main parties are operating this very high accountability, low trust regime. And what I mean by that is that the people have to account for every action they take, but in return they get very little trust from the big parties of government, and the big parties very seldom account for their own actions. And I think that tells you all you need to know about what's wrong with those who lead at the centre of the Northern Ireland Executive. For them, power is to be sought for its own sake, a mechanism for controlling the people, not for empowering them. You know, when papers were brought around the Stormont House talks last year, we assessed them on whether they would make the people better off or worse off. But other parties were only interested in deciding whether, if they signed up, it enhanced or diluted their control of the levers of government. I want to turn that around, folks. I want us at the heart of government, turning high accountability, low trust, into a system that trusts that the people know what is best for them. So I want power further devolved, from Stormont to councils, from councils to communities, from communities to households, because all the best research says that it's the family unit where you make a transformational difference. It also sounds like common sense to me. And while it was natural Stormont would hold on to power when it was returned in 1998 after so many long, barren years of direct rule, I think the mature thing to do now is to pass it on. So what would the Ulster Unionist Party do differently? Well, what we should be doing at Stormont is just setting the vision, the big strategic directions. And what we need to stop doing is the high accountability thing, where we write a 400-page delivery manual with 600 tick boxes, and we warn, woe betide any funded community group that only ticks 599 of those boxes. We need to shred those manuals and put more trust in the ability of our people to deliver for themselves. Take our stumbling steps towards creating shared space and a shared future, currently called Together, Building a United Community. How you deliver that here in Dunadry will be different from how you deliver it at the Steeple Estate, 4 miles down the road. How you do it in rural areas will be different from urban. How you do it on the lower Newtownards Road in Belfast will be different from Belfast's upper Newtownards Road. And I trust the people of all of those areas to know best how to create shared space and a shared future for their communities. I see Stormont's role simply as being to fund, resource and support you at local level, not impose a one-size-fits-all funding network that simply buys control. I want a shared future, and I do have a vision of what it looks like and what it shouldn't look like. And if a shared future means we all have to jump into some sort of virtual blender and come out the human form of beige, count me out, folks, because I am a proud unionist, and we have a big place in a shared future. We understand the value of the United Kingdom. It is the best thing for all of our people, politically, economically, socially, culturally. It makes sense. It is common sense. And in my shared future, pubs will no longer have a sign saying, no sports tops allowed. It'll have a sign that says, all sports tops are welcome. Nobody will have to dilute who they think they are or to whom they want to offer their allegiance, beyond doing it in a peaceful, lawful and respectful manner. And on that basis, I welcome the fact that people like Martin McGuinness are no longer trying to bomb me or shoot me into a united Ireland. It was never going to work. And I do acknowledge his right to try and persuade me into a united Ireland, although that won't work either. But he's free to try. And in return, I will continue to press upon him the benefits of being in the United Kingdom. And by the way, most Irish Republicans know that very well indeed. It must be deeply embarrassing for Sinn Féin to be so beholden to Her Majesty's Treasury for the money that makes Northern Ireland tick. It must be, and let us not forget, by the way, it's not just our block grant. There's the matter of the billions that London had to pour into Dublin when the Irish economy collapsed. It must also be awkward for proud Irish Republicans to continually have to call for Brits in every time there's a problem. They need David Cameron at Stormont to sort it out for them. And it must be uncomfortable for so-called socialists like Sinn Féin to look to Brits with checkbooks to sort our problems. Well, folks, we're not like that. Ulster Unionists are proud people, and we have more self-respect than to rely on the begging bowl to London. We think more. We think more of the union than to name our price for support after the next general election. Other pro-union politicians are content to put a rigid monetary price on their support for the union. So does Alex Salmond and the Scottish Nationalists. Our values, members, our values are not an auction item available to the highest bidder. We value the long-term benefit of the union. And yes, Ulster Unionist MPs will use their positions wisely, bringing as much material benefit as possible to our people. But we will also remain vigilant of the continuing threat from separatists and little unionists. The support this party offers the union has been paid for over many years in blood, in sweat, and in tears. In the service and sacrifice of the thousands upon thousands from these parts who put themselves in harm's way, here at home and abroad, to protect their families, their communities, and their country. For 100 years, members of the Ulster Unionist Party have served their country from the Somme to Afghanistan. And I'm delighted that recent veterans like Councillor Doug Beattie and Andy Allen have seen fit to join people like Danny Kinahan MLA in finding a political home with us, as so many veterans have done in the past. The union of today is not the union of 100 years ago. Since our last AGM, Scotland has voted in a referendum on independence. The union survived, but the referendum was only a battle. It was not the full war, members. There's more to come, and the Ulster Unionist Party is best placed to defend, promote and advance Northern Ireland's place within what will be a new-look United Kingdom. And that's because we have the history, we have the contacts, the shared service and sacrifice, and we have the vision. And we'll do it. We will defend and promote and advance the union because it is the right thing to do. There'll be no price tag on our commitment to being good citizens of the United Kingdom. Now, after the Scottish vote, the Smith Commission reported on further devolution for power to Scotland. And at Westminster, there is a command paper on further devolution in England. The union is being recalibrated. And the Smith Commission and the command paper have the same direction of travel that I do. Get power out of the traditional seats of power, hand it over to communities, into streets, and into the family unit. To be the best citizens of the United Kingdom that we can be, this party must drive a cultural change in local politics. We must find a new mindset. We need to move off an exclusive focus on our dependency on others. For 2 years, the focus has been on protecting the vulnerable from welfare reform. This could have been solved months ago. We were first. We were first to table amendments at Stormont. Sinn Féin, they were so concerned they didn't even bother to turn up and vote when the legislation was going through Westminster. And then they sat in their hands until the infamous rollover at Stormont House last December. And then came the latest crisis, as their Southern Command told them to rethink, pull the plug on the agreement, and return us to the current political normality, uncertainty. Now, we think we have addressed the vulnerable and welfare reform for the foreseeable future. And we think it's now time to concentrate on others who need our attention, not least the working poor, the people who put in 50, 60, 70 hours a week for less in their hand than some on benefits. So let us move on. Let us move on to find a new political priority: serious wealth generation. You know, when Harold McCusker made one of the greatest speeches ever heard in the House of Commons, his passionate opposition to and outrage over the Anglo-Irish Agreement, the block grant stood at £1.5 billion. 10 years ago, it was up to 6. Today, we need a subvention of over £10 billion a year. This is not a direction or speed of travel a good unionist can be happy with. We need to become less dependent. We need to generate more of our own wealth. We need to aspire to ending our dependency on the block grant. We may never get there because of pensions and the national health and the rest, but even in trying, we change the political focus. Wealth for our people. Currently, if citizens in the rest of the United Kingdom have £1 in their back pocket, our people have only 77 pence. And that is the prosperity gap that we have to close. And we have the big idea to make it happen. It's called corporation tax. And finally, it looks as if we are about to get the power to vary the rate here in Northern Ireland. But remember, members, it was our idea. It was Reg Empey and this party that brought it forward. And in terms of making it happen, we have done something other parties do not do. We have listened to the experts. I have always acknowledged that business people know business. So we have trusted their judgment, and they want to go straight to a 12.5% corporation tax rate and do it as soon as possible, which is the 1st of April 2017. All things being equal, we support that call. But if we're going to do it, we should say so and say so now, because Invest Northern Ireland need time. Time to get new businesses on the ground. Time to discuss how existing businesses might expand. And time to manage the hiatus and the tax take that could follow in the immediate aftermath of such a dramatic change in tax policy. And be in no doubt, members, this is something dramatic. As the UK's top rate comes down to 20%, we're talking about a further 7.5% differential. The best estimates suggest that could generate 37,500 new jobs in the coming years. That would transform 37,500 people into wage earners. It will also transform the lives of tens of thousands of relatives and dependents by restoring hope to our people. But it will only happen if we commit now, if we sell ourselves properly, and if we recognize corporation tax is not a silver bullet, and we need to take other actions to make Northern Ireland the most attractive place in Western Europe. And that's our ambition for Northern Ireland, that we make Northern Ireland the most attractive place to invest in the whole of Western Europe. So we need to look again at education, at skills provision. We need to acknowledge the failure to build sufficient A-grade office accommodation to satisfy demand. A lot of current foreign direct investment is in the portable services sector, like the large multinational law firms setting up in Belfast. They don't need factories, but they do demand quality office space, and bluntly, Belfast has run out. It is time to fix that. The headline corporation tax in the United States is currently 35%, and that's why a low rate is so attractive for foreign direct investment. And I was in the United States, members, earlier this month for the St. Patrick's Day celebrations, and I report significant interest in what we're doing with corporation tax. And let me say a word about the USA. At conference last October, I told you I wanted to engage with America. Sinn Féin have been lobbying Washington for 21 years. The day they started, when Gerry Adams was invited to a conference in New York, the then leaders of unionism promptly cancelled their appearances. Now, I understand why they refused to share a platform with a man who condoned the IRA terrorist campaign, but looking back, it seems clear they should have travelled. They should have gone to New York. They should have put the unionist case to the media ahead of the conference. They should have set the agenda, frankly, rather than letting the unionist voice go by default. So last week, I was in Washington as chair of the committee of the Office of the First and Deputy First Minister, but I stayed an extra day, and let me stress, not at the Assembly's expense. And I met people as a unionist. And I got a good hearing. I met Senator Jim Webb from Virginia, a man giving serious consideration to challenging Hillary Clinton for the Democratic nomination for president. It's not impossible that this man, Jim Webb, could become the 18th Ulster Scot to occupy the West Wing of the White House. And he gave me a warm welcome. I also met senior officials from the Republican Party. They also got our message. And I met with people with a reach into the White House and onto Capitol Hill, and they liked our message because they liked the fact that we are unionists, because they fear the breakup of the United Kingdom and the end of the special relationship. They also like our narrative about wealth generation. They love the idea of 12.5% corporation tax. Now, I know some of you have questioned the role of the latest envoy, Senator Gary Hart. Well, in my view, it's better to sit down and discuss these things with somebody rather than turning your back. And that's what I did with Senator Gary Hart in Belfast on Thursday. But let me tell you one thing about the senator. He gets the tension between sovereignty and identity. He knows just because somebody in Stormont thinks they're Irish, that doesn't mean they have the right to fly an Irish tricolour on the flagpole atop Parliament buildings. The Belfast Agreement did not say that. It settled the constitutional question for the foreseeable future. And he gets the fact that that means there's only one flag that reflects our sovereignty, and that is the Union flag. Northern Ireland is British. Northern Ireland is British. It's also part of a relatively small island. Some think that that suggests a direction of travel politically, but for the avoidance of doubt, let me state this. This may be an island, but geography is not destiny. A united Ireland is not inevitable. And Senator Hart, he gets it. He gets that, and I get the need to push on with putting our case to America, because we have a lot of catching up to do. But as one senior advisor out there put it to me, with Ian Paisley gone and Gerry Adams surrounded by a series of sex abuse scandals, the timing could not be better. I want now to turn to Stormont and the continuing issues arising from the dysfunctional nature of the relationship at the heart of our devolved government. Our own party executive reserved judgment on the so-called Stormont House Agreement at Christmas. From bitter experience, we saw the pitfalls, the lack of detail, the suspicion there were side deals, and concerns about implementation. Members, we have a very wise executive. The DUP and Sinn Féin can't even agree now on what detail was discussed and agreed. And it's clear that the two parties have been negotiating a deal on welfare on their own. And implementation is far from on track. For example, arrangements for an official opposition were due to be agreed by the end of this month, which is Tuesday. There's little sign of it. But let us not be totally dismissive of the Stormont House Agreement, because our team got a lot written into that document for what it's worth. The result was not a Republican win. We got a commitment to an official opposition, the next mature step to normal politics in Northern Ireland, if it ever happens. We got the single department of the economy to marry skills and jobs and generate that prosperity our people lack but deserve. We got the acceptance by the other parties of what we called the political game changer in our 2011 party manifesto, agreeing the next programme for government before allocating the executive departments following the 2016 elections. It is the only way to promote truly collective responsibility and common purpose. And the agreement also commits to finally facing up to one of the most toxic legacies of the Troubles, poor mental health and well-being. Now, some have accused the five parties of a begging bowl approach to the Prime Minister in those talks. Let me assure you, members, when I spoke to the Prime Minister, the only issue I asked him to consider for additional funding was mental health, because this is an area where we are clearly different from the rest of the United Kingdom, where we have a special case to put and where an investment in this area will transform lives. Think of the tens of thousands of our people who wake up every morning with no real sense of purpose in their lives and go to bed without a sense of achievement or achievement mixed with frustration. If we tackle mental health properly, we unlock a triple win. We deal with the legacy of the Troubles. We empower people to come off welfare. And we rebalance the economy by making people economically active and maybe for the first time in their lives. So there is potential in the Stormont House Agreement if the will exists to change the political mindset and deliver for people instead of holding on to power for party advantage. We reserve judgment pending faithful implementation. I shall not reserve judgment on our Executive Minister. I simply want to thank Danny Kennedy because he's doing a great job in regional development. Danny is bringing on a cycling revolution here in Northern Ireland, and he is aspiring to become a Member of Parliament. Boris Johnson brought on a cycling revolution in London and is aspiring to become a Member of Parliament. Members, it is not easy being leader of this party. That image was in my mind at 3:30 this morning. Now, some people do ask, what's the difference between us and the DUP? And my answer is often focused on Danny Kennedy because we have in him the Minister for Regional Development, whereas the DUP supply the chair of the Committee for Regional Development. I ask you simply to look at the contrast in the two characters, their values and their motivation. And there you have crystallized the difference, and you have the explanation of why I am an Ulster Unionist. As we go into election mode, let me give you a glimpse of what you might read in our forthcoming manifesto. Ulster Unionist MPs will do whatever they can in their power to extend the full reach of the military covenant to Northern Ireland. We will not allow our veterans to think of themselves as second-class citizens in their own country, the country they have served. We will vote to increase the national minimum wage, not only to meet the current rate of inflation, but also to reflect omissions of previous years. We will support increasing the personal allowance to £12,500 by the year 2020. In real terms, that means an employee on the minimum wage would have to work 30 hours a week before paying any income tax. We will put Northern Ireland's health service back on an equal footing with the health service in the rest of the United Kingdom, and we will measure that in terms of waiting times, investment, and in how many posts are currently unfilled. We will reverse the trend the DUP have engaged in of moving from a national health service to individual regional health services. Not acceptable. We'll ensure public employers with over 50 staff offer formal apprenticeships, and the same will apply to private firms delivering on major public contracts. We'll start building more homes for families. Over the next 10 years, Northern Ireland needs 12,500 new homes every year. Yeah, we're not currently building even two-thirds of that. We are heading, members, for a housing crisis, and the signs are already there in the social housing sector. Very quickly, there simply will not be enough homes for first-time buyers, whatever the cost. And we can change that, but only by putting the right framework in place through the new planning policy statement and ensuring our councils have the support to allow them to take those difficult decisions. Our MPs will use their clout to ensure that at the heart of any future negotiation with the European Union is reform to EU free movement rules. We need to ensure our hands are not tied behind our backs to tackle illegal immigration. That said, we will unashamedly target further immigration of high-skilled and of motivated workers simply because our economy needs them. We will not be blind or neglectful to the indisputable environmental crisis of climate change. In the absence of any Northern Ireland-specific legislation, we'll formally adopt the UK targets, as well as making it a priority for local authorities to consider mitigation measures. Members, the Manifesto will be revealed shortly. I'm confident that when people study what we're proposing, they'll see a distinct, attractive, progressive party. Meanwhile, we will work with the DUP in 4 constituencies in this general election. Why? Because it's in the best interests of Northern Ireland to maximise the number of pro-union MPs returned to Westminster on the 7th of May. Without an understanding, there was a real danger that our capital city would not have a single pro-union MP after the 7th of May. Without cooperation, there was a danger that the majority of the 18 MPs going back to Westminster would not support the union. Now, I know this understanding does not maximise the pro-union potential, either in Belfast or Northern Ireland-wide, not least because the DUP wouldn't discuss South Belfast in a practical manner. They had other priorities. So the understanding is not what Peter Robinson wanted as a first choice any more than it is what I would have chosen as a first choice. But politics is about the art of the possible, members, and this arrangement was the best possible given the different direction the DUP was approaching from. So, members, the stakes are high and the measure of success is clear. The media, we're not going to focus on total votes cast for us or any percentage or any comparison with last time except this one. We enter this election with no MPs. Will we emerge with a ticket back to the green benches? Now, I'm going to tell you, we have some exceptional candidates, some of whom have been selected and endorsed for many months now. So over the next 40 days, member, let's get behind them and let's give them the party's support. Let's also remember a lot of decisions in politics are judgment calls, and no one will agree with everything that the leadership decides. The important thing is how we handle ourselves and that we keep an eye at all times on the big picture. Last year, we started an election campaign that I see running over 2 full cycles. We started well. We tasted success. This May is another major challenge, but it is also a platform to build again for the future, for Westminster 2020, as well as Westminster 2015, and for the Northern Ireland Assembly elections of 2016 and 2021. When Northern Ireland was created in 1921, the Ulster Unionist Party was the dominant force in local politics. Let us work hard to ensure that when we celebrate Northern Ireland's centenary in 2021, we're back where we started. On the 7th of May, the electorate have a great opportunity. It is one day where they have one vote and with it one chance to vote for change, a chance to vote for what they hope for, the opportunity to turn their back on the people who say, if you don't vote for us, bad things will happen to you. It is the chance, frankly, to demand better. And after all you have been through, after all we have been through, after all this country has been through, this politics of Stormont today cannot possibly be as good as it gets. So let us give people the opportunity to demand better. Let us send a signal to those who abuse power for their own ends, to those who are no more than little Northern Irelanders, out for short-term gain no matter what the longer-term damage to the Union. And to those who publicly preach equality but privately call it the Trojan horse that will entrap us. The same politicians who ignore advice and spend millions on a new school for just 14 pupils, while thousands of young people underachieve through the lack of support and funding and resource. That's their equality. Let's send everybody else a signal about unionism. Let's win back the most westerly constituency in the whole of the United Kingdom. Let's send a message to the people who scurry around in the last hours before the polls open, dropping leaflets, trying to scare people into voting in a certain way. Let's tell them Upper Bann is a unionist seat and let the unionists decide who they want to represent them. I know who I'd vote for. 7th of May. And the build-up is a chance to inject some pride back into unionism, some belief back into unionism, some oomph back into unionism. So, let me finish with some oomph. Members, let me introduce to you our Westminster candidates for 2015, some of whom are already on stage. I'll ask the others to come up in front. From Foyle, Julia Key. From West Tyrone, Ross Hussey. From Mid-Ulster, Sandra Overend. From East Londonderry, William McCandless. From North Antrim, Robin Swan. From East Antrim, Roy Beggs. From West Belfast, Bill Manwaring. From South Belfast, Rodney McEwen. From Strangford, Robert Burgess. From South Down, Harold McKee. From Lagan Valley, Alexander Redpath. The next Member of Parliament for Newry Armagh, Danny Kennedy. The next Member of Parliament for Fermanagh South Tyrone, Tom Elliott. The next Member for South Antrim, Danny Kinahan. And the next Member of Parliament for Upper Bann, Joanne Dobson. I thank them all for standing and I wish them all every success. And I finish with thanks to my long-suffering and magnificent wife, Linda Bryles. Linda, come join us. Folks, remember, 7th of May, one day, one vote, one chance for change. And if I may finish by quoting our Women of the Year, it is time to work our backsides off. Thank you very much.